Welcome to the Body First Healing Podcast. I'm Britt Piper, survivor turned somatic experiencing practitioner and author. If you feel stuck in old patterns, overwhelmed by your emotions, or disconnected from yourself, you're in the right place. Each week, I'll share practical somatic tools, personal stories, and conversations to support you in building a more regulated and embodied life. Because you can't talk your way through healing, you have to feel your way through. Together, we'll explore what it means to come back to yourself and create a life that feels safe enough to fully live in. I am so glad that you're here. Welcome to the Body First Healing Podcast. Man, that is so wild to say. I've been saying it a few times, to be honest with you. I've recorded a few episodes already, and I'm getting comfortable being in the seat, being in front of a microphone. It's weird because I've always been on the other end of a podcast conversation. I've always been the person getting interviewed, but being a host of my own podcast, I think is something I thought would happen one day. And now that it's actually here, it just feels so surreal. So by the time you're actually hearing these words, my podcast will be live. This will be episode number 1, the introduction into the Body First Healing Podcast, the ethos, the intention, and just a bit of a life update for all of you. I am really excited to have this conversation today. And I feel like these are things that have been on my heart now for a couple of years that I haven't had, I feel like, the outlet to really share it in. So I might kind of be all over the place today. I got a notebook in front of me with chicken scratch written down. I tried to do an outline, and then I was like, you know what? I just want it to be natural and organic. So the Body First Healing Podcast. What is the ethos and what's the intention behind it? And I think at first I thought that this would be a podcast where I have guest experts and we talk all things somatic and body first healing and nervous system regulation and, you know, the new and upcoming research. And although there's going to be so much space for those conversations because it's such a big part of my healing journey and the work that I do as a somatic experiencing practitioner, as a trauma-informed, trauma-trained practitioner and educator, I also want this to be a space where I can share with you just some of the continuation of my healing journey, the learnings and the unlearnings that I am still going through as a survivor of trauma myself. I think oftentimes people look to me as being on the other side of trauma and pain and suffering. And I think that's why I've had a hard time over the past few years, just feeling like it's hard for me to authentically show up because I have been put into that category of healed. And I'm using air quotes. I say that a lot. I'm using air quotes. Healed. And if you're in my Body First Healing community, if you've worked with me, if you've read my book, you know that we will actually never be fully healed and that we are going to be healing for the rest of our lives, right? The rest of our lives, we are going to be unlearning the things that we had to learn in order to survive. And we are going to continue to come home to ourselves in new ways, and new layers of healing and pain will emerge time and time again. It's kind of like this set of Russian dolls. And so this podcast is really an opportunity for me to share openly and honestly about just what that looks like the messy in the middle moments as someone who, again, has worked in this space for so long and someone who's been on the personal healing journey for so long. I just really want to normalize that it's still hard and there are still days and seasons of life that are like, oh my gosh, this is like, have I been healing? You know? And I think we need that reminder that the ride of life is its ups and downs and its ebbs and flows, and that's to be expected. And in hard seasons of life, if we're not having a hard time in those hard seasons of life, like if it doesn't upset us, if it doesn't make us angry, if it doesn't make us sad, if there aren't moments where we feel shame or like we don't belong, then that's maybe more evidence that we're really disconnected from ourselves. And I aim to be connected to my humanity, to every experience that I have, the good, the bad, the ugly, the horrible, and the difficult. And I feel like over the past 5 years, I have really come into this place in my healing where I have so much self-acceptance and self-compassion and understanding for all of the parts of me that emerge. All that to say, I just want to share all of that with you guys. And so my hope is that we can learn and navigate this messy life together. And all the while bring in the incredible tools, resources, practices that have helped me in my life and meet incredible people along the way, bring them into the show and learn from them. So that is really what the ethos and the intention is a space for education, a space for experience, and a place for us to just come home to ourselves together. Okay, so let's talk some life updates. Man, oh man, I feel like so much has changed, like I said, in the past 5 years. I feel like the pandemic was really the turning point. I mean, honestly, for so many people, the pandemic was a turning point. But 2020 was also the year that I had my son. It was also the year that my husband and I moved here to Texas for his job. It was the same year that he then lost that job that we moved here for after we had built our first home, had our first child, and we were away from family for the first time. And yeah, 2020, I fell in love with motherhood in a way that I wasn't anticipating. Not because I thought I'd be a bad mom or because I wasn't looking forward to motherhood, but just because I had always been so in love with my career. Like I loved being a career woman. I loved being an entrepreneur of many businesses. I was incredibly driven. And I thought that that would probably always be like priority number one. And by the way, I'm not saying either path is right or wrong. This is just what personally I have found for myself. But when Noah was born, June 2020, mid-pandemic, the world was kind of shut down, right? I mean, we were still quarantining at the time. I would say the job that I was doing the most was professional speaking. But of course, I couldn't be on stages at public gatherings because we couldn't all be, in public together because of COVID. And so my professional speaking career definitely went on pause. And at the time, I had already put together the Body First Healing program back in 2017. At the time, it was called the Functional Breakthrough Method. And so I was starting to do one-on-one trauma-informed coaching. I had been training at the Polyvagal Institute. I was starting to do some somatic and nervous system trainings. And so that was something I could do remotely. So I did that kind of here and there. But being able to, being forced to slow down. And this has been like the theme of my life over the past 5 years, by the way. This is the pattern we're going to keep coming back to. I was forced, the circumstances of the world slowed me down to like a screeching halt. And man, I'm so happy that happened. Like, I am so grateful. I look back on that time and yes, the world was such a crapshoot. It was so difficult for everyone, but I'm really grateful that I had that time to just kind of nest and be in this cocoon with Noah and David. And it was a really beautiful time for us to just be with ourselves, to just be in our bubble. It was a very peaceful time in our life, very calm. But then when David lost his job, it was like, okay, we got to get back to work. He had set up his life around this career. Quick little sneak peek here. David and I actually have 2 episodes coming out. We recorded them actually just yesterday. It was so much fun, you guys. I'm excited for you to listen to these. But he talks a little bit about, losing his job and how difficult that was. But he had built his entire life around working in the golf industry. Both sides of his family, they come from, big golf families. His dad was a professional golfer. He still works in the golf industry. And so David had every intention of working in the golf industry forever. And when we moved to Texas, it was for his dream job to work for this golf company. And he had put in years and years and years to get this job, and he finally got it, only to lose it 6 months later. And looking back now, we talked about this on the podcast, again, sneak peek. It was such a blessing in disguise. I just look at it as like universe, God, whatever you believe in. I look at it as like it was God's protection. What do they say? Rejection is protection. And this was absolutely like had God all over it because he was working 80 hours a week. He was on the road. We live here in Dallas, Texas, and he was working nonstop, you guys. And it was hard at first with Noah being born. It's like, how are we going to make this work? I have a career at the time. It wasn't as demanding, but he's never going to be around. And that was really difficult. That was really hard. And when he lost his job, even though it was so devastating for him and took a long time, like I think he's still working through it, you guys, but I think he saw it as an opportunity that I can now be home with my family. Like I don't have to grind. I don't have to work so hard. So he got a job working for a corporate company, and it's a super flexible job. He still has the same job. He loves it. He has a very lenient schedule. So if I need him because I'm doing work calls, he can help with the kiddos. It's great. It works so great for our family. However, when he got that job, that meant that, and this is me just like transparently speaking, there was, of course, like a pay cut. And that was a decision that we decided was best for us because the payoff was that he could be home. And maybe we didn't need a nanny, and maybe we didn't need, babysitters and daycare because he could be around more. But that also started to put this pressure back on me of like, I have to get back to work. I have to provide. And if you know anything about me, if you've been following my story for a while, if you've read my book, you know that I am what I claim to be a recovering overachiever. And that certainly runs in my family and the generation of women in my family. And I interviewed my grandmother, the women in my family about this and how this pattern started generations and generations back with my great-great-grandmother. And so these old patterns of like, I only have myself to rely on, even though that was so not, like, of course, rationally, that's not true, but it's like this muscle memory just kicks in, and the nervous system is like, all right, start providing, start working, you need to get it together. And so I started grinding again and getting back to work. And before you knew it, it was like my career kind of took off in the somatic space and social media. I got really into social media. And before I knew it, it's like I was on this runaway train. And don't get me wrong, I love my career, but there came a point in 2022 where I just felt like I was burnt out again. And I was juggling motherhood. I was juggling multiple businesses. At this point, I had hired a number of employees. I had a private practice with practitioners working under me, apprentices. I was pouring a lot into everyone else, but I wasn't pouring into myself. And that started to bleed into my personal health, my mental health again, how I showed up as a mom, how I showed up in my marriage. And so I knew that things had to change. And I share about this a little bit in the book too, but there came a point where even like, every year we have a theme for my business. And with the team, we always pick like, what's our theme for the year that we're going to focus on? And the theme for the year, I believe, of 2022 was self-preservation. Recognizing that as practitioners and as helping professionals, we cannot show up for our people if we are not showing up for ourselves. So I prioritize for the entire team, how are we preserving ourselves? How are we taking time for ourselves? And I think that was really because of this place that I had gotten in where I was trying to lead and manage from a place of helping people to set healthy boundaries for themselves. And I wasn't doing it for myself. So yeah, all that to say, over the past couple of years, I think what I have found is that I had started to move at a pace that was no longer my own. And I was creating these conditions and organizing my life in a way where I felt safe based on old patterns, but I didn't feel connected to myself in a way that felt authentic. I remember I would go from call to call to call to call. Like I'd have 7 sessions in one day and I'd have no time to like nurse my baby in between. And I'd be so burnt out. And there would be moments where I would start to just like drift away in my mind. And there was a time driving in the car with David, and we stopped at a stoplight, and I wasn't even able to listen to like the conversation. He was like, "Are you here? Are you okay?" Like, I feel like you were so checked out, and I just broke down. And I said, I feel like I'm suffocating and I just want to run away, and it's hard. And so unfortunately, I had to really, really, really course correct. I think that when you start to decide these things in your heart for yourself, and when you start to reflect on what you really, truly, authentically want for yourself, and like what's for you and what is not for you, I think the biggest question that I came back to was, what are the things in my life that are pulling me out of my life, that are pulling me out of my aliveness? In healing, I think, what we come to find is that your healing should pull you into your life. It should reconnect you with your authentic desires, your wants, your boundaries, your intuition, your expression, and anything that pulls you out of your life, anything that disconnects you from yourself. That's not healing. And that's usually you chasing old patterns. And so I had to reconnect with those things. And that meant setting boundaries. That meant saying goodbye to people. That meant grieving relationships. That meant letting go of this idea of permanence and these dreams and these visions that I thought I had for my business, which was really hard. For so long, I thought I wanted to run a practice and grow a team and have this incredible big community of women working alongside me. I think that the universe naturally, again, when you start to step into your self-expression, the universe naturally will start to create situations where those things can fall away when you're not willing to make the boundary, or when you are not able yet to make the boundary for yourself. So there was some hard goodbyes. There was a lot of, again, letting go of things that were no longer mine to hold on to anymore. And so I just fell into this space of wanting more depth in my life over speed, wanting to grow deeper and not wider, both in my businesses, in my relationships. I started to scale back in many ways and stop giving myself away to everyone and everything. I mean, I was doing it across the board. I was doing it with my family. I was doing it with my business. I was doing it financially. I was doing it with my time. I wasn't creating time and space for myself to be poured into. And so those things really started to change. And I think it was around in 2023 when I started to set these goals. I wanted to work part-time. I didn't want to work full-time anymore. And as someone, again, who has multiple businesses, it was like, how the heck are you going to do this? And then I was like, oh, I also want to homeschool. It's like, dang girl, like you are just shooting for the moon here. Like you go from, this workaholic overachiever to now like this person who wants to work part-time, homeschool with your kids. And then I was like, oh yeah, by the way, I also want to live in the mountains. But I do believe that when life gives you a vision, you can create it. And it takes time, it takes sacrifice. It's not something that happens overnight. But I look to my parents, for instance. My parents, they live in Colorado, and man, oh man, they've talked about moving to the mountains and moving to Colorado for decades, you guys, decades, for the longest time. And they did it when they were in their 50s. And I think I'm just at a place in my life where I'm like, I don't want to wait until later. Like, I don't want to wait until I'm older in life or until I'm retired to start living out my dreams. I want to do it now. And I know that sounds so bold. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I don't want to live a life that doesn't feel like mine. And so we have made sacrifices. We have worked so hard to get to a place where I am now working part-time, Monday through Wednesday. And we did just purchase land in Montana, 8 acres of land on top of a mountain in Montana. So we're going to be building a property there that we can visit in the summer when it becomes unbearably, ungodly hot here in Texas. Everyone just leaves because, oh my gosh, it's so hot. It's unbearable. But it's also going to be an investment property for us. And it's going to be a place where I can host more retreats, where I can host events, practitioner trainings. We have dreamed of all of these wonderful things, and I'm excited for that to really come to life. But it's also going to be a home base and a place for us to just reset, to slow down, to disconnect from the world, and to unplug, because when we do that, our own voice, our own authenticity, our own desires become so much more visible, right? And so, yeah, I'm really, really, really looking forward to that. Other ways that I am moving deeper to is in my relationships. I feel like over the past 5 to 10 years, I had these really close relationships in my 20s, and then, we moved away. And I feel like some of those relationships I put on the back burner, and I didn't nurture them in the way that I maybe should have. And I look at my husband, and my husband he even talked about it on the podcast. He has these lifelong friendships. These friendships are just so beautiful. These guys that he has known since like elementary school. I mean, he was gushing about them and how great it is to have those kind of male relationships. And I don't have a lot of that. And so over the past couple of years now, I would say the past 2 years, I've really been prioritizing just going deeper in relationships. I'm recognizing that I am not a surface level person. And for the longest time, I had this really strong fawn response. I would people please, I would pacify, I would placate, I would keep the peace as a way to stay connected to people. But I wasn't living from a place, again, of authenticity. And so in my friendships now, I'm really seeking so much more depth rather than just this surface level connection. And that feels so much safer to me. It feels much more, again, authentic and connected. And so this concept of depth and moving deeper is also playing out in social media as well. The way that I've showed up on social media has been very educational over the years, just cranking out a lot of content, sharing the things that really light me up. But I think that I have struggled because I don't want to be a content creator. And there's this new term out there. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's called a comfort creator. So it's not someone who just creates content, but someone who also provides like this sense of comfort, someone that you feel like you can relate to, you can connect with. And that is really what I am not just seeking out when I am looking at social media, but it's also what I am trying to create for you all as well. And I can't do that when I am not showing up as myself on social media. So I feel like maybe the past year or so, I've just been sharing more of some of these topics that I've been talking about, some of the daily struggles, the seasonal struggles, the hard seasons of life that I go through as a mom, as a wife, as a human navigating this difficult world that we live in. And so I'm finding that there too. I'm just not at a place anymore where I want to do things that don't feel authentic, things that feel like I'm just doing it just to fill a role. I don't want to show up in this surface level way. So that's a lot of probably what you see on social media, is that I'm much more forthcoming about difficult days. And that's also going to mirror, again, a lot of what you're going to get on this podcast, is me showing up in a way and sharing with you openly, honestly, and the raw truth of what's going on. Okay, so some other updates. If you don't know, my book came out. So in March of this year, March 2025, my book, Body First Healing, was birthed out into the world. So I kind of think of it that way. In the past 5 years, I have birthed 3 babies. Noah, Shia, my fierce girl, and my book, Body First Healing. And that book too, I think, required, when you're writing a book that is part prescriptive, but also part memoir. Like, I wanted this book to weave in stories about my life, to bring in some relatability. I didn't just want it to be a trauma book, a science-heavy book. I wanted it to be a book that people could, again, see themselves in. And that meant that there were some very long and overdue conversations that I had to have with family members, with my mother in particular. And we navigated some pretty difficult, some pretty difficult dialogues. And so with the book process, I think that again also forced me to slow down and to really tend to myself, because I think we were kind of like excavating these stories and these experiences that I think I knew happened as a little girl and that I was told about but never really processed or reflected alongside of my mother. And so for us to really talk that through was, number one, difficult, but number two, so incredibly healing, I think, for both of us. It just reminds me of the beauty of rupture and repair, right? When there's rupture, when there's a moment of disconnect, it is such a beautiful opportunity to strengthen a bond. I was just talking with David about this. He and I had a difficult conversation a few days ago. I think it was kind of like this coming to a head moment where there were things that had been left unsaid over some time, and we finally had the conversation. And after that conversation, when we both met each other with so much love, compassion, understanding, I woke up the next morning and I just said to him, I said, I feel so close to you right now. And that's the beauty of granting yourself permission to have these difficult conversations with people, rather than running away, rather than skirting away from it, rather than putting it off and avoiding it. It's an opportunity for so much closeness, so much connection. And so I'm really grateful that my mom and I were able to have some of those conversations. But at the same time, me sharing parts of my birth story also meant that I was sharing parts of her story that she hadn't yet shared with the world. She didn't choose to. She's not on social media on this public platform. She's not a professional speaker. She's not a podcast host. She's not an author. And so it's difficult when you have these experiences that are shared and kind of interwoven with other people's experiences, because I wanted to share it in a way that felt safe for her, in a way that really honored her story and all of the nuances of what happened when I was born. I'm kind of skirting around it, so maybe I'll just talk about it here really quickly. So in the book, you guys know I've shared so much about some of my previous traumas, like my sexual assault when I was 20, losing my brother when I was 16. And these are kind of the big events in my life that I feel like left these big craters. These big shock traumas that I spent years devoting time and attention to for my healing. And kind of like I said earlier, healing is like, opening this set of Russian dolls. There's just new layers that you were constantly finding and that are constantly emerging. So a lot of my 20s were spent just processing, reflecting, healing through those experiences in my life. And I feel like in my 30s, and especially after becoming a mom, what's been coming up for me now is more so my birth story and my formative years and what it was like for me to be in the womb. So what I shared in the book and what I've now been talking about a little bit more publicly was that when I was born, I was taken from my mother at birth by Child Protective Services, and I was put into foster care because there was methamphetamine found in our system. And I was told this story by my mom, I think when I was like 14 or 15. And then we never really talked about it after that. I was in foster care for a few months, and then we were reunited. Her parents took me in. They agreed to take me in. And she got her life back on track. And, growing up, I had a roof over my head. My mom became wildly successful career-wise. And there was food on the table. I was never hurt. I was never harmed. But there was always this sense of like not belonging. There was this sense of feeling like I wasn't wanted. A lot of shame, a lot of anxiety, a lot of insecurity. And I look back now and I'm like, yeah, that was that insecure attachment, that separation that I had from her. And so we had some difficult conversations around that. And that has been so much of what I've been pouring my time and attention and my healing into over the past couple of years. And what I learned more, I would say, in the past year and a half was also about just the experience that I likely had when I was in the womb. And these are all things that I work with clients on, through the somatic experiencing lens. We work with body memory, and implicit and body memory starts to form at 7 weeks gestation. So when a mother is experiencing stress during pregnancy, the baby experiences that. When there is detachment, emotional detachment from the baby while the baby is in the womb, from the mother while the baby is in the womb, the baby can feel that, right? Attunement starts from a very early age, the way that the mother holds the baby, in her belly, the way that she soothes or rocks or sings or hums or caresses the baby. Those are all felt experiences that start early on. And so it wasn't just the separation from her, but it was also the detachment that happened beforehand. My mom was experiencing her own trauma when she was pregnant with me. She was a very young mom. When she was pregnant with me, I believe she was 19 years old, and she had already had my brother, who was 2.5 when I was born, almost 3. And my biological father, he had left my mother for another woman. There was infidelity happening when she was pregnant with me. And she was left alone, pregnant, with another child to take care of. And she didn't have the resources. She didn't have the support system. And so there was a time when she was pregnant that she was homeless, and we were living out of a car. She was living off of food stamps. And she was terrified. And it wasn't until I'm getting emotional now just talking about it. She said it wasn't until she was about 8 months pregnant that she accepted that she was pregnant. I think that the knowing that there was this baby inside of her, but the betrayal that she was processing at the time was too hard. And so she was in denial that she was pregnant. And she said that she didn't start buying baby clothes or doing anything to prepare for my birth, my coming into the world, until she was a little over 8 months pregnant. And when I was born, because she had never gone to any doctor's visits, she had never gotten herself checked out. That's why they did these certain tests and found that there were drugs in our system. And so knowing that there was this detachment, and that there was this probably, this heartbreak around my pregnancy, it was difficult to hear at first, because I felt so sad for her. So sad. She was so young. She was all alone. She was terrified. She had no one. And then I was sad for me too. So that's something that we've been processing. I shared a few years ago that my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And so I've been trying to navigate this whole book, birthing this book into the world in a way that, again, feels supportive for her, in a way where she feels considered, a way that she feels loved, that she feels honored for everything that she went through. I know I'm the person I am today because of my mom. She is one of the strongest people that I know. But it's hard to still see her hurting after all of these years and everything that she's gone through. So we've been navigating that, and again, trying to go deeper with her and not keep things, surface level. So that's been part of what I've been navigating with the book. And it was actually really beautiful. The first book event that we had during the book launch and the book tour, she actually was the moderator. So I hosted a book launch event at a local book club, or not a book club, at a local bookstore here in Dallas. And I asked my mom if she would be the moderator. And so she and I got to sit down and have a very intimate heart-to-heart. She asked me questions about the book, about my life, about my experiences in front of an audience of people. And I felt like it was such a beautiful full circle moment for us. So yeah, been navigating that too. So all that to say, I just feel like I have been just in this season lately where I have been really connected to my younger self, whether it's through the book process and, going back through those memories and those experiences alongside my family, and also through my own experiences of motherhood. I mean, when you become a parent, it mirrors to you so much of your history. And so because of that, I've had this incredible opportunity as I've been raising my babies to allow myself to experience a different kind of childhood alongside them. One that's playful, one that's, full of self-expression, and one that's silly, and one where we're allowed to have really big emotions. So I've really been loving sharing just some of that content around motherhood and what this experience has been like to experience childhood in a new way alongside my own children. Something I am really, really excited about is homeschooling. I'm interested to see, quite honestly, how I do with it, how I juggle it all. So in the fall, Noah is starting kindergarten, which is just so wild to me. It's so crazy. I can't believe he's starting kindergarten, but he is going to be going to a school that's considered a hybrid school. So 2 days out of the week, he's going to be at school with his classmates, with his teacher. It's a school all the way from pre-K up to senior year, 12th grade. And then the other days of the week, he's going to be home with me, and we will be doing homeschooling, following the same curriculum that they follow at school. So it is a kind of classical collaborative approach, which is what they call it. And so it's nice. It takes off some of the pressure of me, like having to figure out the curriculums and like the lesson plans. I mean, oh my gosh, that just sounds like a whole other job in and of itself. And so I'm really excited. I'm excited to have that experience with Noah, to see how he does in this kind of structured environment, to see how I do in this kind of structured environment. And again, I just think that that is going to be an opportunity for us to go deeper in our relationship, to go deeper as a family, for me to be able to be a part of that experience alongside him. I just think is going to be really, really beautiful. So, but I mean, we will see, you guys. Like, I'm saying it's going to be beautiful and wonderful, but it might be hard, right? Like, you never know until you give it a try. So who knows? I might find that I'm horrible at it, and that I just am not good at it, or that I don't like it. I don't know, but I am hopeful. I am hopeful that we are going to fall in love with homeschool in the same way that my husband did. My husband was homeschooled. He talks about it in our podcast episode coming up. So again, keep an eye out for that. And I guess maybe something that I want to end on as like an update here is just talking about my Shia. My girl, my Shia. Oh, my daughter, she just turned 2 a little over 2 weeks ago. And you guys, she is so fierce. She is bold. We call her our walking tornado. And I feel like she is everything that I wasn't. If you've read my book, I talk about how I was labeled as a very easy child. Very easy, very calm. I never cried. And my way of looking at that is I was probably just very detached and dissociated and just kind of shut down in my system. And I talk about in the book how it's healthy and it's biologically appropriate for children to have big reactions, big emotions, big personalities. And man, oh man, does our Shia really show up in that way. She is a true testament to it. But I will say, because I'm not used to that kind of personality, it's been difficult for me to navigate, you guys. And it's interesting because, like, again, I have a background in women's studies. I am all for women stepping into their power. And I have an entire chapter in the book called Healthy Aggression, Stepping into Your Life Force, like how I've had to learn in my adult life how to step into healthy aggression, to protect, defend, to go after what I want in life, to have power and passion and vitality and aliveness. Yet when Shia has it, it's something that I'm still getting used to. And it's interesting to just see how that's showing up in my body, how that's showing up in the bracing, in the shutting down, in the holding my breath when she's big and defiant and trying to assert her boundaries. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is so difficult. So yeah, anyone out there who has like just a strong-willed little girl and who has really been nurturing that and finding a way to like breathe life into that in a way where they feel empowered, where they feel supported. I am trying my best because I know that's so important for a little girl in this world. And David's been trying really hard too. But like, if y'all have any advice, please hop into my DMs. Let me know. I think I'm doing a good job of it, but I will also just take all the pointers and all the tips that I can get. So hop on over to Heal with Britt. Send me any messages because truthfully, I do not want to dim her light at all. Like, I just want to strengthen it, but it's hard. So anyways, any advice you can give, I would appreciate it. All right, you guys, all that to say, this has just been a nice little heart to heart. Thanks for letting me just, share just some of the raw and honest truth about where I've been, where life has taken me over the past 5 years, the beautiful, messy ride that it has been. I am so looking forward to having this new space, this new outlet to, again, just go deeper and to explore it alongside of you. So just know that that is what you can expect every single week here on the Body First Healing podcast. It is going to be truthful, honest, deep dives, whether with me or with others who have stories to tell, who have expert knowledge to share, who have support to give. So thank you for lending your ear. Thank you for lending your heart today. I hope that anything that I've said, if it resonated with you, that you're able to take a moment to just be with that, to honor whatever came up. And if you need me, remember, you can always, always, always reach out over at Heal with Britt. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Can't wait to see you next week on the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into the Body First Healing podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with someone that you love. I'll see you back here next week, and until then, be gentle with yourself. You're doing the best you can with what you have, and that is more than enough. Just a quick note, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a qualified provider for personal support.